Good evening to tonight's presentation on workplace skills for young professionals. Welcome, Robin Walker.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Today, we're going to be talking about workplace skills for young professionals, specifically for Gen Z. And I am a business consultant, so I see what business owners are looking for with new employees. And I also have 3 kids that are in their young 20s that are navigating new workplace internships. So I can kind of see both sides. If you are a new professional, you're all of a sudden expected to know how to do all these things and adult in the real world. And on the flip side, you're joining a career, corporate situation, or possibly the trades. And there's all these older people that have expectations for you. So today's a space to kind of blend those things. If you are watching, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat what kind of industry you're in or what industry you're hoping to get in. So are you in more of the trades? And if you want to share specifically, that would be great, because then I can try to use some examples from those of you that are watching live. So if you can add those to the chat, that would be really helpful. So I want to start with just a disclaimer that these are kind of leaning corporate small business, but you can take from it what will work for you. Every business is different. Every environment is going to be different. So take from it what helps you and just leave what doesn't apply to your situation. And there's no dumb questions. So I'm used to an interactive workshops. So this is out of my comfort zone a little bit at just talking for the whole time. So if you have questions, I would love to interact with them in the chat. There's no dumb questions, no judgment. Please ask any questions in the chat, and then we can address them as we go along. All right. So our first topic we're going to be talking about is first impressions. So we have a very short amount of time that we have for, oh, excuse me, I'm just going to scooch back here a little bit. We have a very short amount of time to show who we are when we meet someone. 69% of people form a first impression of someone before the person even speaks. So when you first meet someone, they're going to form an impression before you even say a word. And it only takes a tenth of a second for someone to decide if you seem trustworthy or not. So that's a lot of pressure, I know, but there's some things that we can do to make sure that we are at least showing up in a way in our corporate environment or at an interview, or when you're doing an internship, that we can show up in a way that people are going to give us the benefit of the doubt just by how we're showing up. And I want to say that this is not to say you should change your personality. You shouldn't be who you are. You definitely need to show up who you are, but you want to make sure that you are dressing for the situation. I'll be saying it a lot throughout this of know your audience, right time, right place, right? So we want to show up at our best selves. Any industry, regardless of where you're working, you want to show up clean, neat clothing, combed hair. I know that seems like we already know that, but you'd be amazed at some of the employers. They're reporting back on what people are wearing to interviews, how they're showing up for work. Just an example of we love the beanies, the knit hats, but there's a lot of work environments where that is not appropriate. So the key is to look around to who are you trying to get them to see you as a positive first impression. So who are you meeting? How are they going to be dressed? And not saying you need to dress their way, but just to have a similar level of dress or way that you're showing up. The dressing thing can be very industry specific, so I won't go into that too much, but I think it's helpful to look at the person who is one step above you one level above you at the job. So it might be where you might be going next, and asking yourself, how are they dressing or how are they showing up? Because if someone's going to picture you in that next level, you need to be showing up in a way where they can picture you being at that level. All right. So next we're going to talk about communicating confidence. So one of the things that the studies show that makes a great impression when your first impression is confidence. However, if you are new in an industry, how are you going to present yourself confidently if you're inside saying, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is so new. How do I do this? When you aren't confident on the out or on the inside, you still want to show up confident on the outside. So what are some ways that you can communicate? Excuse me just a sec. That you can communicate confidence even when you don't feel it. So one is your body language, showing up with good posture. That's before you enter the room. You're taking your deep breath. You're steeling yourself for the interaction, and you're sitting up in a meeting. Your posture says a lot about your confidence. Also, that handshake. So I know this is something that some people cringe in different generations with doing the handshake, but it's still a part of a lot of corporate culture, and having an introduction where you do a good handshake. Now, if you're wondering, is my handshake good enough? Is it at the level it should be? I'm going to suggest that you find someone in your life that identifies in the boomer generation. If you can find a friendly boomer person in your life, ask them if your handshake's good enough, and they will definitely tell you. The handshake was a big part of their generation, and so they know what a good handshake is. Another one is eye contact. And I know a lot of young people that really don't love the eye contact, but it shows that you're listening. It shows that what's happening in that conversation with that person matters. Even if you're shy, but if you're looking down when you're talking to someone face to face and you're looking down a lot of us can empathize because we know they're probably shy. This is a nerve-wracking conversation, but the more you can keep your chin up and look eye to eye, the more confidence you are going to exude, even if inside you don't feel it. Just having that upright posture and looking someone in the eye, you don't have to stare them down like a death stare. You can still look away now and then. But in general, you want to try to train yourself to give eye contact when you're meeting someone or you're in a meeting. Another thing is speaking clearly. When we're nervous, we tend to mumble or talk quietly, and it's normal, but we want to try to speak clearly. Again, when you have your chin up and you're speaking upright and you have good posture, you're generally going to have clearer speech because you're talking to someone, and just the way your body is positioned, it's going to be less mumbly and you'll have that eye contact. The last thing is appropriate language. So I'm sure that some of you, if you're in the Gen Z generation, your parents may or may not use some words at home. As you've gotten older, they might be using these words more often. However, their version of some of the, let's just say, profanities or slang, those words were really bad when we were your age. And sometimes things change in culture, but you want to be conscious of who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to someone in a different generation, those words may have a different meaning for them. So you want to be careful that you're using appropriate language in situations. And just because a manager or a boss uses certain language does not mean that it's appropriate for you to use it as well. They've earned their position. You're still earning your way. So my suggestion is always to err on the side of caution and not use the words that may or may not be appropriate. If you're in doubt, don't use it. On that note, there's also, when you're talking with an adult or you're in an interview or you're with a customer, you want to make sure that your answers are complete and professional. So if I go somewhere and I get my coffee and I say, "Thank you so much," and they say, "Yep," it has a different feel than if they answered a different way. So I don't know how many of you love Culver's. I'm over the border. So I am just over the border in Wisconsin. So Culver's is a favorite. When you're in the drive-thru and you say thank you, they say my pleasure, or they say you're welcome. It's such a small little shift, but it really elevates your language and your communication. So be aware of when your responses are, yep, no problem, gotcha. If there's spaces where, especially if it's someone you're meeting for the first time, try to use a more professional answer. It doesn't always make a huge difference, but to the right person, it might, because it exudes that you are cautious and you're also being better with your communication. All right. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay. We're going to go next on the communication topic. We're going to talk about presentations. Not every job you get, not every job you're not going to have to do presentations, but a lot of times you will at some point. It might be in a meeting that you have to stand up and give a report. You might have to do customer or client facing presentations. And I know this is a big, no one of any generation, when we were all in our 20s, the very few really enjoyed doing presentations. I used to hate it, and now I do public speaking as a living. So there's room for growth, and just know that most people do not like it. So if you are watching live, if you could put in the chat, give an emoji or a word that shares how you feel about public speaking. There are the rare few that really love it, but most of you don't. So I'm going to give a few little tips on things that you can do to make them not quite as awful, to help yourself feel a little better about them. Number one is practice. And nobody wants to practice, but it really does make a difference. The more you practice your presentations in front of people, or even on your own in private, the more confident you will feel, because you will know what's coming up next. You won't have as often that awful feeling of, what do I have to say next? Because you've practiced. Know your material. It's so much easier too if you're talking about something that you understand or something that is a passion of yours. Now, here's where a lot of you aren't going to probably want to do this, but it really does help. It is to record yourself saying whatever it is, even if you only have to do, let's say your employer is going to have you go to networking meetings and stand up and say a 1-minute blurb about your group organization. You can read it off a piece of paper, and that works. But even that 1 minute, or even if you have to do a report to a small meeting in a small group, in the privacy of your home, record yourself doing the speech. If you want to start with audio, you can record yourself on your phone, just on the audio app, and do a voice memo and record yourself, and then listen back to it and see where you can improve it. When you get it to a point that you really like it and it works, you can listen to that back to help yourself memorize the speech. Usually, I don't suggest memorizing a speech word for word. It doesn't come off as naturally. And then if you get stuck, you end up not knowing what's next. But reciting the material over and over again really helps. So I would start with an audio voice memo. if that's the most comfortable. And I will tell you, I have a podcast, I do speeches, and I do this so I can help remember my speeches. And it is horrifying to hear your own voice back on a memo, let alone if someone hears it. So I get it. It's super cringy. It's awful, but it really, really does help your brain to learn the material. So audio note or record yourself on video. And then when you watch it back, you notice if you're swaying side to side, if you're fiddling with things, you can see what some of your verbal tics are. If you say, so, but all the time. And that's normal. It's a part of communication, but you don't want your message to be overshadowed by distractions in the way that you present. And your coworkers understand if you're new at this, but the more you practice, the better. The other thing I'll say for presentations is to know your audience. Put yourself in your shoes and think, what do they already know that I don't need to repeat? What do they need to know? And what action step or final thing at the end do I need to say that they need to hear? So put yourself in their shoes so that you're delivering a message that matters to them and is aligned with who's in the audience. Then when we get to slides, you guys are, you're in one right now. So you're on the other side of slides. We want to make sure that the slides have a point and they're not just what you're going to say up on a slide. When there's too much text, people are trying to read the slide while you're talking and they can't really focus on both. So if you do have to create slides for some kind of presentation, just make sure that they are enhancing your message. Your message, that's the missing piece. The slide just enhances that. You want to limit the text, have slides if it improves the understanding, it adds humor or entertainment, or it helps clarify. So just be cautious with slides. So next I want to go into meetings. You guys are going to have to be in meetings. Some of them may be on Zoom and some of them are going to be in person. If you want to stand out as an intern, as a new employee, you want to walk into those meetings prepared. So if you know you have a meeting coming up, review the emails that talk about what you're going to be talking about in that session, or review any notes you have that are things that you might be able to contribute to this conversation. If you're on Zoom, you have your whole desk they can't see. Have your materials in front of you. Have resources you might want to be able to access quickly. So if someone says, oh, hey, John, how did those numbers happen? You don't have to quick figure out, oh, I got to find that file. Where did I put it? Pull stuff up. You can grab it and have the answer right away. It's going to make you feel more confident going into a meeting, and it's going to make you look a lot more proficient that you are ready for their questions. If you're going to do a Zoom presentation, there's a lot of little tools you can get. There's things like this where you can add your paper here. They clip in so that it can be next to your screen and you can see your notes so that you're not looking down every time. Plug in your computer so you don't have to leave the screen like I did just a minute ago. Make sure you're charged up. But there's a lot of different things on Amazon that can hold your notes or help you for a presentation. It just gives you a lot more confidence. Any questions so far on meetings or presentation? Okay, the last piece of the communication piece that I want to talk about is clarification. One of the things when I asked some of my business owner colleagues, what are some things that you wish new employees would know? A lot of them said that they wish that their new employees would ask more questions or would clarify or let them know that they didn't understand. People sometimes are so concerned with looking like you don't know what you're talking about or you don't know what you're doing that they won't ask for any clarifications or ask questions, and they think, I'm just going to figure it out. There is a place for that for sure. But if you're confused with what a manager or your boss or colleague is mentioning, They may not remember that you've never experienced this thing. You just got here. You don't know what they're talking about. So it's okay to ask for clarification. Or maybe whoever you're talking to is not great at communication. And after they're done, you think you get it, but you're not sure. You can say things like, am I understanding this correctly that fill in the blank? Or maybe you start a project and partway through, you want to go to your manager and say, I just want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. Is this what you had in mind? I don't think that I think it shows employers that you are being conscientious about what you're doing and you want to do it the right way. When you have a meeting with someone one-on-one, or they stop by your office and they want to share what you're supposed to be doing next, it's always helpful at the end of that conversation to restate, if they don't, to restate what your action step is at the end of the conversation, to say, okay, so I will have that completed by Friday, and do you want me to email that to you? And then write all of that down, put it in a document somewhere. It's great if you have conversations in person to go back to a file and be able to type out, as of conversation this date, these are my action steps. That way you remember. If they forget, because bosses are human too, and sometimes they'll forget what they told you to do, you can go back and reference exactly what the expectations were, so you don't have to worry about confusion. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Okay, the next one that I think is, we got a lot of questions on this, is how do you know if it's supposed to be an email, if it's supposed to be a text? Should I go in their office and ask them this question? How do I know what communication style is best for my question or my situation? So we're going to go through each one. I don't want to overgeneralize, but often the different generations have different preferences for how they like to be contacted. When you think of your grandparents, so this might be the boomer generation, maybe part of Gen X, when they want information, what do they tend to do? And at least the ones I know like to get on the phone, and they will just call that restaurant and ask for their hours, chat with the hostess. They're all about that face-to-face or on the phone communication. Just, nip it right in the bud and just give them a call. Now, your parents, how are they seeking information? Might be email. Gen X, we do a lot of emailing, some phone, some text, kind of in the middle. And how about you and your friends? At least a lot of the young people I know would rather die than answer a phone call, unless it's maybe one of their friends, and they love to message or text. So if that's you and you're like, can I just send them a text? There are situations where you might be able to do that, and we're going to go through each one. But the purpose of this is just for you to understand where the other people might be coming from and the way that they might feel is the best way to communicate. Now, one is not better than the rest. They all have their place, and there may be people that are making a phone call when it should be an email. So don't feel like your generation is, every generation's doing what they learned and what their history is. So none of them are wrong. But I want to talk a little about when it's appropriate for the different types of communication. So let's talk first on email.
I'm so cool because I type in all lowercase. So millennial of me. I don't care. Sure thing. Yay. You got it, friggin' Lily. I'm a full-grown adult. Sure thing. Wow. You got it, boss. Yeah. I'm such an...
So that's when we're talking about email, it's hard, and texting, it's hard to know what level of professionalism are we talking? How do we know what kind of communication we want to do? So that last little video was really just about, he's using just the same 2 words, but the punctuation is making all the difference. So when we come to our communication, we want to align it with which one is appropriate. So when we're talking email is a pretty safe bet for most types of communication, but not all. Email is best if you have detailed information that you want documented. The great thing with email is you can go back, you can comb through the conversation if you need to find details, especially if you're someone that you're really into the conversation and then afterwards you can't remember half of what was in the conversation because you're really personal and you like chatting, but then afterwards you're like, I don't really remember what she told me to do. That's when email is really great. And so this also comes down to how you're wired as well. If you have something that you want to be able to look back and say, what date did I send that? What date did they get that? Email is really great for that. It's also obviously the way you want to send attachments. If it's something important like a project update where you might have more details or different types of summaries for a project, it's when you have a bulk amount of things that need to be documented. That's a great one for email. And also then people usually open that, if it's got attachments, they can open them on their laptop then. Not everyone has Apple everything linked in. So if you send something through a text or messenger, they may or may not be able to open it on a work computer or a work laptop. So that's where email really can come in handy. It's also communication that doesn't require immediate response. I know some business owners that check their email once or twice a day, and that's it, because otherwise they get into that black hole of their email. So if it is something that is of a timely nature, you want to make sure that it's not email, or you send an email and then also touch base with that person either in person or through a message or Teams so that they get notified, but the bulk of the information is in email. So best for email is things that you want documented. It's a little more official, but it doesn't have to be. So then let's talk about Gen Z's favorite, phone calls. You guys know you love them. Just kidding. At least most of the Gen Z that I know are not a big fan of the phone call. However, there's places where it really is the best fit for the situation. If you know that what you're going to ask them, there's going to be some back and forth conversation. Maybe you're coming up with some ideas, or you know that they're going to give an answer, then you're going to give an answer, then back and forth and back and forth. Sometimes that gets really annoying through email, but if you want to document it, that's still, that's okay. But the phone call is great if you have to have an actual real conversation. This is also situations where you anticipate they're going to have some questions. It's also best if you're delivering complex or sensitive news, where your tone might make the difference of softening some news or explaining some news. We all know we get the texts where you can't tell what the tone is, and you may take it one way and they may take it another way. The phone call can avoid misunderstanding. If there's a situation where you're not sure how they're going to take it, a phone call might be best. It's also for conversations that benefit from personal interaction. This might be if someone does something for you and you really feel thankful and appreciate that. A phone call is a much more personal interaction for them to feel and hear your voice thanking them. Phone calls can imply more importance because not everybody uses them as often. It can make something feel more important by having the phone call. I think it's something that the sooner you get comfortable making phone calls and just doing cold calls, whether that is for sales or it is just making calls for work, the sooner you can get used to that, the easier it's going to be. So I have a few little tips for you that I've done with young adults before that help them before they place a phone call. It might sound cheesy and you might say, oh, I don't need to do that, but it really helps. Even as a full-fledged adult, I still do this at times if I'm going to be making a phone call that I want to make sure goes really well. So first, you can write the actual first sentence that you're going to say when someone says hello. We know our names, all of that. But when you're waiting, and if you're nervous and it's ringing and you're getting more nervous, having the first thing you're going to say written out in front of you so you can just start talking really gives a sense of relief. So write out the first thing you're going to say. Hi, I'm so-and-so from this company, and I'm calling to find out this. At least you got the first sentence out sounding professional and like you do this all the time. Then I suggest to have any information on hand that the person might ask you about. So just on a personal note, if you're calling like your doctor and you think, well, they might ask for my prescription number or my health insurance, whatever it is, just have that on hand. And then you can also write bullet points of what you want to make sure you cover and then any questions you want to ask. So you're planning this call out in advance. Of course, you don't know what they're going to ask, and it might go a total different direction, but at least you're starting with your information, questions, and your intro. I like to have for young adults some kind of get out of this situation last sentence written down that they can say if the conversation goes in a way where all of a sudden they realize, I don't know, I don't have an answer, and I don't know how to end this conversation. And it could be something as simple as, I can find out that information for you and get back to you as soon as I can. Or, thank you for the information, I will be in touch. Just some kind of closing line. The more you do it, the more you're not going to need this. But I do think it really helps. And then to remind yourself what the action step is. So after your conversation, you write down exactly what you need to do by what date so that you can deliver on the promise from the phone call. Excuse me. And then write down the date, who you talk to, and now keep that in your file. It's just a good life skill for any phone calls, but especially at work. So then if a manager or a boss comes to you and says, hey, did you ever talk to John? You can say, yep, I called him on this date. We talked about 10 minutes and this is what the outcome was. And you don't have to just try to remember because it's really hard to remember. And you don't want to be scrolling back through your phone going, I swore I called him. Keep your notes. If that's one thing you guys get out of this session is write things down. It really, you think you're going to remember, and we just have too much going on. So have your little side notebook, carry around a Post-it note pack with you, and just write things down. It's really, really the best way. Okay, so next we'll go to the texting or messaging. There's a couple scenarios where this might work, but I just want to caution you that whoever you're texting or messaging, if it's not on the official work platform, so there's ways to message in different official work platforms, but if you are texting to their personal device, you want to make sure that that is consensual, that they're okay with you texting work things to their personal phone. As you're in your career longer, a lot of people want boundaries more so now than ever, and they want to be able to put their phone down and not think about work. So you want to respect that. Just like you don't want work bothering you when you're out doing fun things, you may not want to be thinking about work. So if it's a personal text, just make sure that they don't mind that you're texting them on a personal device. And if you are, make sure it's things that really only should be text messages, and that it's during business hours. Unless there's an evening event that you're meeting at, that would make sense. But try not to cross the lines with timing and personal devices. But messaging or texting can be great if it's a simple update, it's a confirmation. It might be a brief reminder, meeting starting, where are you, something like that, or just a quick status check. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about in-person communication. So that might be walking down to their office, or it might be through Zoom, just face-to-face, not in person, but face-to-face via screen. And what situations would be good for that? Face-to-face is good if you're going to need to have a complex conversation, or it's the type of conversation where it really needs to be done in a way that you are seeing their facial expression, they are seeing yours, there's no miscommunication. It might be feedback where you're having your monthly or yearly conversation about performance. It could be conflict resolution, and it might be collaborative problem solving. I think if you're doing idea generating, that works really well in person, face to face. I feel like if I sit down with someone and we're coming up with event ideas, it's going to go so much more efficiently. We're going to have better ideas when we're playing off each other in person. So there are times when it is best to hop down to their office and have a conversation. The thing you have to be careful with face-to-face is, if you're just hopping into someone's office, is you are interrupting their flow. So depending on the relationship with that person, what your work structure is like in your building, you want to be conscious of not just interrupting people all day long, because it's easier than waiting for them to take a break, or it's easier than sending a message because you just need the answer right now. So just make sure that you're conscious of interrupting different people's workflow. You can always say to them, hey, later, when you have time, will you stop in my office to discuss this event? And if you have time to do some brainstorming, then it's on their timeline to be able to come in and talk with you. Also, face-to-face is great for building rapport and trust. If you're hiding in your office all the time, only doing everything through a laptop, you're missing that face-to-face rapport and trust that other employees are building with their boss, their manager, or whoever decides that if you get raises or promotions. So having some face-to-face conversations can be really beneficial for your career in general. Okay, so I've got 4 questions to ask if you're trying to decide, is this a text, a phone call, an email? And if you ask yourself these questions, it will help you decide which one. Do I need an immediate answer? Remember, email's not immediate. Is there a chance of miscommunication? Do I want our responses documented? Number 4, which method will get the best response from that individual? So as you know, there might be some people where if I email them, I'm not getting an email back from that person, just really is not good at emailing back. And I know it's going to be forever for me to get a response. If I know that about that person, even if email is the best way for me to give them that information, you might need to add on a secondary way of communication. So again, know your audience, know who you're sending it to, and what is the best way of communication with that individual. Okay, any questions at all? Feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, so next on the communication topic, we are going to talk about texting and email and how to elevate yours and things to look out for so that you show up as the professional and no one even realizes that you're brand new. When you think of your texts, how do your texts differ from your parents'? And if anyone wants to put this in the chat, I'd be curious to see, how do your texts differ from your parents'? What do you notice that's different? something I notice is how to spell the word you. Some of us spell it Y-O-U. Some just use a letter. It might be punctuation, might be abbreviations, lack of punctuation. So keep in mind these messages and these emails might be your first impression. This might be the first time they're coming in contact with you. But even if it isn't, you want to be putting out your best image when you're communicating at work. Again, there's a right time and a right place. Who is the recipient that is receiving this? Is this you and a coworker on a private, personal group chat where you guys are sending work memes? And that's one type of communication. But if you are messaging your boss, we want it to be a different type, your up-leveled, your elevated communication. I always say that it is better to be overly proper than under when it comes to your career. If you are not sure, I'd rather have you err on the side of caution and be more proper, all the capitals, punctuation that you think is proper, than leaving things out. The other thing is to proofread your emails and your slides and your messages. We all make mistakes. Things get through autocorrect. We all have typos. I had one on a slide at an event the other day. It happens, but you want to prevent it as much as you can. So don't assume that the computer is going to find all of your errors, because there's sometimes some words sound the same but are spelled differently and they use the wrong one. You want to look as professional as you can and set yourself up for success. So we are going to do an email makeover. And I'm going to show you an example that I would not suggest. And then if you are in the chat, if you could put what you think is not so great about this email. This is an email from Robin. And it says, did you ever get that form back? I need it by 5 or I won't be able to get it signed. Thanks, Robin. So if you had to elevate this, what would you add or take away? Or what do you see as missing from this email? So this is not a message. This is an actual email. If you want to put anything in the chat. So obviously, there's no capitals. Everyone in our generation, we had to do capitals. We did not have the option really in any kind, like we just did capitals. So it's just kind of a thing that we're expecting. If you have the feature on your phone where you have to go in and actually add capitals and it doesn't do it on its own, I get that is something that a lot of younger people do like, but it's going to make more work for you at work versus if automatically the capitals are just going to happen. So yes, from the chat, there's no capitalization. Also, the thanks is just THX. We all know what that means, but in a workplace, we want to spell it out. There's also no greeting and not an informative subject line. So our participant in the chat, you get a gold star. You noticed them all. The other thing is, what form are they talking about? There's not really any detail. Maybe this person deals with 80 forms a day. They don't know what that form is. I also think it's a little demanding or a little bit about just them. I need it or I won't be able to get it signed. It's really about them. And now you are on a team and it's about the team, not just what you need. So let's take a look at another option. And this is definitely, some of you will be like, yeah, that sounds like what my mom would write, but it's definitely more professional. Vendor form for XYZ freight quote. Hi, Jenny. Did you have any luck finding the freight quote for XYZ yesterday? If there's any way that I could grab it from you by 5 o'clock tomorrow, so it can be, is there any way so that it can be submitted in time? Thank you for your help. Feel free to call me if that would be easier. Full name and phone number. So what this makes it easier for Jenny, the other person, to do what you're asking them to do. And the first example, Jenny is going to have to figure out what form you're talking about, look up your number if she wants to call you about it. Not sure, not going to be able to find that email in her email list. It's going to be harder to find because of the subject line. So we want a detailed subject line, a greeting. Just an email is like writing a letter. And I know it seems like more work, but it really will help you stand out from others your age when you have a professional email. Caps and punctuation. I also gave a specific action step. Could I grab it from you by 5 o'clock tomorrow? It's very specific, but I'm also asking it as a question and not demanding it. And then there's also my phone number to make it easy and a last name. I did a small business collaboration with someone and I was trying to get information. I could not find this woman's last name anywhere, not on her website. It wasn't anywhere in her email. If your work doesn't set up an email signature for you, that's something that I would do if I were you. And it has your contact details in it, it has your title, and it has your full name. And then you don't have to fill it in every time. So if they don't do that for you as a business or, as the company, then I would do one on your own just to make it easier and you don't have to remember to do it every time. So just a reminder, email is not a text. Even if you're doing it on your phone, it is more like a letter. I'm going to give you guys a little tip as well. If there's ways that you cannot use the word I in your first couple of sentences in an email, it goes over better with the recipient. So I could have said, like if it said, I had a great time meeting you, it's I had a great time meeting you. Instead, you could say, it was great to meet you, because we want the first two sentences as much as possible to be about the recipient and not about ourselves. So that's just a little side tip. It works really, really effective for sales emails as well. Also have a clear step for what to do next. All right, we're going to quickly do a text example for a message. Even though you're sending a message, you still want it to be professional. So I actually received this one from a young adult. Hey, I would like to use you as a reference for my camp counselor application. Could I get your email? So again, no punctuation. And starting with a hey, I know for someone that's a peer, that would make sense. But for me, it felt a little mismatched with me being older than him. It felt, it just didn't feel quite right. And it says, I would like to use you as a reference. And that felt very much like a presumption that this is happening and I just need your email, versus asking if I'd be okay with it. So a way that I reworded it is, hi, Mrs. Walker, I'm applying for a camp counselor job, period. Would you be willing to be a reference for me, ? If you don't mind, they are asking for an email address. Thank you. It is more work, but it's going to leave a much more powerful impression on me when it's like this versus the last one. And if someone's trying to decide, do I want to promote this person, refer this person, trust this person with serious work, you need to show up in a way that shows them that you are ready for this. Okay, so we only have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to talk real quick about, let's go with how to take initiative as an intern or a new hire. So some of you are very ambitious and you're like, I got my internship. I am ready. I want to make a great impression. The easiest way to get a job is by being hired after an internship. I see it all the time online right now that internships really are the key to connections and getting hired at that. So how are you going to stand out? You want to do some of the things that the decision makers value. So getting to know in any way that's possible, that's appropriate, finding ways to connect with managers or people in positions that they're going to be part of the decision makers. You want to be able to show up in a way that shows your value. You want them to be able to picture you in that role. So you need to show up in ways that shows that you are either ready for that or willing to learn. So one way is to take initiative, and that's noticing patterns. What are some of the things that happen and how can you jump in to help? Maybe they have events and they always do this certain thing before at the beginning of the event. Anticipate that and help them with that. If there's a way you can find an answer before asking, that shows initiative. If you do make mistakes, own them and fix them. Be reliable and also show your personality. You have a unique way of doing things and you don't want to be like everyone else. You want to show your personality and you want them to get to know you personally so that it's you that they choose. You don't have to hide your personality to be professional. You can find a blend of both. I want to share one quick example of the standing out and taking initiative example. So I was volunteering for a festival and we were loading up this van with all of the things at the end of the night. They had the high school football team came to help out. So me and another woman are trying to lift these things into the van. There's a big group of the football players standing around joking on their phones. There were 2 or 3 that came up to us and said, "Can we carry that for you?" And we said, "Of course, thank you so much." And then they're like, "How else can we help? What can we do?" It was like night and day, the 2 different visuals of waiting for someone to tell you what to do versus showing up and saying, "How can I help?" So ask yourself in those situations, don't be the one standing around waiting. Take initiative and find out how you can support and be a team member. Okay, so that's pretty much what I have, but I do have a minute or 2 for questions. So if anyone has a question that we didn't talk about or you want me to go a little more into detail with, I'm happy to answer that question. But in general, I just want you to know that everyone started somewhere. Everyone started out at the beginning. No one started as the CEO with no work experience. Everyone was the new guy at some point. So just learn what you can, show up as yourself, and don't be afraid to ask questions. All right, I'm happy to answer questions too if you ever want to reach out. Again, I'm Robin Walker Business Consultant. I hope everybody has a great night. I do see one question, Erin. Do you want me to, is it okay if I address that quick? Okay, it says, "I'll be working directly this summer with library patrons at an internship. Any tips, advice?" All right. Well, I assume you love all things library and books. And so I would make sure that that passion shows up, that you serve the patrons with care and passion and consistency, and that will show up to the people that are in charge that will see that passion and see that energy, and keep maybe a little notebook of ideas. So if you're an idea person and you come up with a lot of library, like fun things you could be doing, instead of sharing every single one, write them down. And then when the right time is there, you might be able to give some ideas for different programs. Hopefully that helps. Okay. If there's no other questions, then I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Robin. That's a wealth of information that could be put to great use. Thank you.
I hope so.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.